All right. I'd like to just start out, and then I'll open up the questions. But first, I just want to thank some people who give me time to do that. Our players, you know, they fought hard all season long. It wasn't perfect by any means. We had our ups and downs, but those guys hung through. And I told them, you know, they were resilient is the word I would use, despite some of our setbacks during the season. You saw that down the stretch. Coaches, you know, they laid it on the line. They put it all in. You know, I'm in the office right next to Leslie, Frazier, and Sean, and down the hall is the offensive staff. These guys put it in. They put a lot of hours, a lot of work. I can promise you, nothing. They've looked at every single thing of every single game, even the ones we lost, and I'm really appreciative of what they did. Nate Bresky and our training staff. It's an unsung group, but just the health of our group between him, Eric Ciano, and Joe Collins. You know, and Nate had to deal with all the COVID. This is a second year of dealing with that, and that's a lot of headaches on him. Beyond, he never signed up for that when he was an athletic trainer, and I appreciate what he and his staff have done. Jeff Mazurek, our equipment. I mean, we had the craziest weather. We had to go on the road to get some normal weather, and he had, you know, whether it was Josh keeping his hands warmer, all of our players. You know, the field got frozen. We were trying to keep it tarp for that playoff game against New England, and trying to make sure our guys had the right cleats. Those are things that people don't think about, but it's injury prevention and guys playing to their, you know, to their caliber. And Jeff and his staff did a great job. You know, our scouts have already hit on the road again to help put this team together, and they're at the NFLPA and Senior Bowl, and we can talk about that. But I'm really appreciative of them and our owners, Terry and Kim. I know it's easy to forget, but they give us every single resource, and I mean it. And I talk to GMs, I talk to other people. Some people don't have it the way we have it, and I hopefully everyone in this city realizes that they do give us every single thing we ask for, and that's huge for me. I can sleep good at night knowing that we have everything we need. If something doesn't work, it's not because they didn't give it to us. And last, our fans. You know, the Bills Mafia. I'm sick to my stomach that we lost the other night, but I am so appreciative. Our building is so appreciative. It's painful. And for people to show up at the airport at 3 in the morning, I don't know what the temperature was, but I wanted to hug them all. But I'm just so appreciative all year long, no matter where we went. We lost in Jacksonville, and that was probably the most painful game other than the other night. And so many of them stayed and were like chanting for us. I mean, I would have been booing us. I was booing myself. And it just says a lot to who they are. And I'm sorry that we didn't get it done. We're all hurting, and I'm sorry. With that said, I'll open up to any questions.
Brandon, how many times have you run through how the end of that game went the past few days?
I haven't slept much, so I've thought about it a lot, John. It's painful, and still going through it. You know, I haven't watched the film, to be honest with you. I watched a little bit of the last plays, but I can't watch it right now. I'm not in a good spot, but I will. We'll review it, and we'll learn from it. I promise you that. There's a lot of pain in this city, and there's a lot of pain in that building over there, and you know, we're going to do everything in our power to not let that happen again.
What can you tell us? I realize, you know, you're not on the sideline. You're upstairs. But what can you tell us about the how and the why all that went down in the final 13 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's tough. At the end of the day, like, we didn't get it done, and we've talked about it. Sean and I have talked about it at length. You know, talked about it with ownership, and you know, there's nothing I can say that's going to fix it. We've reviewed it. We've talked about it. I can promise you we're going to continue. We're going to learn from it as an organization. You know, things happen. There's, you know, the golf analogy. There's, you know, there's no mulligans here. You know, I'd love to re-tee it, and Sean would as well. Our players would. Our coaches. We didn't do what we needed to do when we had them there for that 13 seconds. And you know, Sean's got a knot in his stomach. He's got a pit. You know, he wishes there's things he could have done. You know, there's nothing I can tell you that's going to fix it. We have to learn from it. You know how much that we work on these things. Sean and I talk about game management all year long. After every game, games we win, things that don't necessarily get talked about in the media, we still talk about things. And I may ask him questions and he'll explain what the thought was there or whatever. I'm big into game management, and this is one I can tell you we're going to learn from. And again, there's nothing I can say that can fix it. I wish I could fix it. I've thought about it a million times.
Brandon, did you, I mean, recognizing nothing's ever linear for this league, but outside of the division, again, you did lose 6 games as opposed to 3, and you got knocked out a week earlier in the playoffs. Would you consider it a step back, given where you were last year?
No, I don't think it's a step back. It's a good question, Sal. You know, sometimes you have teams that go through, you know, we always talk about you go through adversity, and various things happen during each season. Sometimes you're in a funk, or you lose the wrong players at the wrong time. You know, it's a matchup league, and sometimes you match up against certain opponents better than you do other opponents. I mean, you know, we lost to New England here. You know, I thought the weather probably suited how they were built better than where we were at the time. And but there's other games that we lost that, you know, we would like back. I thought we were playing really good football. The key is to get in the tournament. I wish we had won a game or 2 more, which could have at least 1 more home game, maybe 2, if I was saying, you know, regrets. But I think this team was playing really good football down the stretch. You know, I think some of you have referenced it. You know, this team was really hurt after that New England loss here. They know how much that means to this city and this fan base, and to us, it's a division game. We take our division games very seriously. And then we had to turn around quickly and go to Tampa, you know, Super Bowl champion, and the first half just was spinning out of control. And, you know, I thought the players and the coaches did a great job of just, hey, forget the scoreboard, let's just go out there and see what happens and lay it on the line. And, you know, if not for a call or 2 here or there that, you know, probably could have really helped us, I think we'd have won that game. And but the light came on there. You know what? Look what we just did in the second half. Let's get back to that. Let's be ourselves. Let's be loose. You know, maybe we were a little bit tight. You know, I don't know. But I thought we were really playing good football down the stretch. And, you know, I think you saw it the other night. That was a heck of a game between 2 teams. You know, Kansas City, I don't need to, they're one heck of a team. And compared to where we were a year ago, when we played them twice, once here, we hung in with them, but it really wasn't as close as probably the score. We went to that AFC Championship, and, you know, they didn't run us out of the gym, but we never really made it a game, I would say. This year we went on the road, and we played really well there week 5 and beat them. And I think that gave us some confidence. We had to go back on the road again, and I mean, that game could have gone either way. I mean, I truly believe we played them 10 times. It's probably 5-5, and that's my heart of hearts. They may think different. That's how I see it. If we had just finished that game the way we know how, we're not sitting here right now. We're preparing, you know, for another one. And so I think we took some steps in the right direction, even though we didn't make it as far as we did a year ago.
So Brandon, with that said, you know, last year at this setting, you had a very clear focus on retaining your own in free agency. That was the goal of this franchise, and you executed that goal. When you sit here today, knowing though that you still haven't gotten over that hump, is it still the goal of retaining your own, or do you have to maybe say, I need to look
outside this organization for the reinforcements necessary to get us over that hump.
Yeah, and I would say, Jay, it wasn't when I left here last year at this time that we had to have all our guys back. It worked out, whatever we had, 21 or 22 starters, something like that. But I didn't know if, Matt Milano, if we were going to lose him, or Daryl, or Feliciano, various guys. We did bring in Emmanuel Sanders, who came in and helped us. We got Starr back. I didn't, try to put it that we had to have everybody back. I wanted to get some of those pieces back that I knew could help us that did, but I was still looking on the outside, last year. And we'll do the same. We're going to assess this roster, which we've started personnel meetings this week with each side of the ball, and we've got to first know our own roster before we start looking at other rosters, and we've got to be honest. And it's hard when you lose a game like this to take the emotion out. If a guy played really good this week, but he hadn't played good consistently all year, we can't put too much positive. Or if a guy just didn't play well the other night, but really was a big reason we were there, we don't want to take that away. So we gotta step back, but we also got to be honest. But Jay, I'm going to look everywhere. I'm going to look inside this building, and the cap matters here too. So there may be some guys on this team that I want to keep that I can't keep them all. We now have paid Josh, and which is good because I know what his number is on the books for the upcoming years, and we can just build around it. The cap, went back last year, so we had to restructure some guys' contracts. I normally wouldn't like to do that, but we had to do it. A lot of teams did it. If you look across the league, there were a lot more restructures just to get under the 182 number. This year it's going back up to the 208, I think. It's not going to be perfect for us, but it's going to be better. And we'll still have to make some moves, but I wouldn't see us being like big spenders or anything like that. But we'll definitely look to fill some spots from the outside as well as retain some of our guys.
Brandon, if I could follow that, from a defensive standpoint, I mean, statistically during the regular season, number one in the league in 6 significant categories, including points and scoring, that can't be overlooked. But at the same time, you did things in part to match up more effectively with the Chiefs last offseason. We've kind of seen that play out. Do you have enough defensively to get over the top? Seeing how that game played out the other night, do you need more?
Adam, we could have won 50 to nothing, and I still would think we need more. I mean, that's the God's honest truth, because everyone's when you get up here, everyone's chasing you. Your division's chasing you. We've won that 2 years in a row, and just because we beat the Chiefs, I'm sure they would still look at. They're going to, at the end of the year, however they finish, they're still going to look at the teams that are going. They're going to have to run into next year. So, I think we did some good things. I think we played them. We played them twice this year. I thought the first time we really played them very well defensively. I think they adjusted and they handled it better this time. They probably got the better of, their offense got the better of our defense the other night. But they do that to a lot of teams. They're really good. I mean, that quarterback he's outstanding. And Tyreek Hill he's a unique guy. If you guys see a guy like Tyreek Hill out there, let me know. I'd love to have him. So it's just that speed that he took off, after we took the lead and we were up 3, I think, and he took that crosser, we were in 2-man, and he got past Levi, and there were some angles that guys probably thought they had the right angle on him, and he just beat it. And you can't coach that. I would love to have a lot of guys with that speed. It's just a rare trait.
Brandon, kind of going off of that, last year we talked about the need for speed and matching the Chiefs' speed, as you just mentioned.
Yep.
Is that going to be kind of an emphasis, maybe even more so this offseason and when you're going towards the draft?
Not necessarily. I mean, Heather, they're still going to be a good football player. You don't want to put a bunch of track guys out here and say we're going to keep up with them, but they don't have instincts. I'm always looking for speed. Size, speed, like those are prototype things that we're looking for at whatever position it is. Whether it's linemen with speed, whether it's D linemen with speed, like I'm looking for that at all times, and it does help. But you you got to be careful that you're not just chasing speed and we're losing instinct, smart, and feel. Does that make sense?
Whether it's speed or not, I think a lot of the talk last year was matching the Chiefs, beating the Chiefs. They're the measuring stick, building a team. Some of the moves made to combat what they're doing. You saw what happened in the Super Bowl, and maybe you can speak on it, how you built the team to match them. Is that what you're thinking here today? Is that's still the team that we have to beat? We have to find a way to find the pieces. And I understand you still have to beat New England's of the world in your division. I understand that. But is that what your thought process is?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to, against out, if we had beat, let's say we beat them the other night, I'd still be, when our season was over this week, I'd still be looking back going, the Chiefs are going to be back. Pat Mahomes ain't going anywhere. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman, they've got a lot of speed. They've done a great job. You know, Coach Reed, Brett Veach, give them a lot of credit. They've had a nice slow build. You know, I don't know what Andy got there, maybe 2013, and they've done a great job. You know, they had some pieces because they started with Alex Smith, and we're putting some pieces around him, Kelce and Tyreek and those guys. And, you know, it was a really good situation. Mahomes came in, sat for a year, learned from a great pro like Alex, and then you start out with those weapons. A little bit different than our build here with Josh, where we were having to redo the cap at that time with the same rookie quarterback. So it's kind of a different way to get there, but they've done a great job, and I think everyone in the AFC are definitely looking at them. They're the gold standard. I said it a year ago. They still are. We'll see how they play against Cincinnati this week, who's a nice, you know, they've done a great job there with Joe Burrow.
Brandon, can you maybe just give us a rundown of what you thought you got from your rookie class this year?
Yeah. Start with Greg. You know, for a guy who set out a year of due to COVID, I thought he did a great job. He started 17 games and then the 2 playoff games. Probably definitely hit the rookie wall in there with some games. You know, probably wasn't as physical with his hands or just. He started really well in camp, started early in the year. I thought he hit a little bit of a lull, but he came on late. I think it was Atlanta. He had the sack fumble against Matt Ryan and really kind of regained his poise and helped us down the stretch. And he is an unbelievable young man. He fit in great. I think he's going to be a really good pro for us for a long time. Boogie, on the other hand, you know, we went with another D in there, as I told you multiple times. Wasn't planning on doing that. Boogie fell out of the numbers. It wasn't anything we were disappointed in him, but you got some vets, and you're honestly going to rely on those when it's close. You're going to rely on the experience of Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison. I think Mario ended up with 7. I don't remember what Jerry had, but it just became a numbers game at times where we couldn't get them all up. And it's nice that you got in the bullpen in case you get injuries, but selfishly, you know, in my seat, I'd love to see them all play and play more. I thought Big Boogie really did some good things when he got his opportunity, and this will be a big offseason for him to come in and, as I've told him, fight for a starting job. You know, don't just settle for a backup rotational type player. I thought Spencer did some really good things for us, had some strong games. Dion was out to start the year with COVID. We had to play him at left, which was not our plan. We drafted him, and it didn't look too big for him. Dion got back, and we didn't start him at the year. We kind of we were trying to figure out, you know, a veteran group, let a rookie kind of ease in, but did some really good things. I was talking with Bobby Johnson the other day, and just his knockdowns per snap were really high. Just a guy cleaning the pocket for Josh, getting downfield, taking guys out. He's got some things to learn. I thought he hit the wall a little bit at times too, but you know, we expect big things for him as our right tackle going forward. Who am I leaving out here? Tommy Doyle did a great job, was the extra lineman for us. Played a lot late. Obviously he had the touchdown, which was a cool thing for him. We expect a lot from Tommy. He really from preseason wasn't sure if he was ready to help us on the 53 immediately, but where he was probably made one of the biggest jumps of the class from where he was when we ended camp to helping us down the stretch. You know, Speedy did some good things when he got his chance. Wild Goose is gone. Who else? Hamlin. DeMar did a great job. I think he's got a real legit chance. Obviously he's behind Micah and Jordan, but he's a good special teamer, and Jaquan kind of settled into that third safety this year. I think he's really going to push Jaquan next year behind those two guys, but I think if he works and does the thing that he did this year, I think he's going to play in this league for a while.
Brandon, we spoke about a couple of these guys during the movie, but considering the assets that you have devoted to the defensive line, rookies and free agents,
Yeah.
draft free agents, did you feel you got enough from the defensive line? I know it's the number one defense in the league, but did you get enough from your pass rush specifically from that D-line?
I think in certain games we did, Sal. I think there were some games that we would have liked to have more, if I'm being honest. But I think they definitely helped. Sometimes what happens is people, when your rush is going well, you play some opponents, they're going to get the ball out faster to frustrate you. They're going to screen you. That's how you defeat this defense, is a penetrating group. But consistently all year, probably not as much, but I think they did some really good things. We're kind of in a blend of some aging vets with some young guys, but I like where we're at. I like where we're heading, and so I'm always going to put resources in the front. It's just how I believe it should be built, and don't ever be shocked if you see us trying to add there, free agency or the draft, any point.
Brandon, one guy that's so polarizing within the fan base, Starlin Tubalay. Obviously, he missed last season coming in, a little bit of an unknown. Some availability issues at times this year. What was your assessment of him this year
Yeah.
and moving into next year?
Yeah, really good question, man. I think Starr came back. I was worried to take a year off, worried about injuries. This is a hard, his position, it's a car crash in there. And I thought he had a couple things early, missed the first game, but once he got going, that game in Miami, his first game back, he really balled out and played well. He was a force, probably his most consistent play until he got COVID that day of the Jets. But if you look at his tape from week 2, his first game, through whatever game was before the Jets, he was one of our most disruptive linemen. We've talked about it before, he's not going to get a bunch of sacks. I know he did one in the New England game, but when he got COVID, when he came back, it really affected him. And without getting too deep in the woods, I don't think he returned to form. And I think he'd be the first to tell you that, to what he was playing early in the year. And so he got better, and I thought it improved the 2 playoff games, but I still don't think it was as consistent as he was, the first part of the season.
Brandon, going back to the scouting and the draft coming up in the near future, last season, a year ago, everything was kind of closed with COVID. The NFL Combine was not open directly to in-person and
Yeah.
such. Does that make a difference this year that I believe now the Combine will be open to in-person and assessing these guys face-to-face? Is that big of a deal that's going to be a plus for you coming this year?
It's definitely a plus to be able to get up next to these guys and be around them, and just even when you're not interviewing them, you got people kind of keeping an eye on them at the Combine, keeping an eye on them between practice if it's at the the East-West or the Senior Bowl. So that exposure will help us for sure. The Zoom world, and I appreciate you guys doing this in person. I hate the Zoom world, but the Zoom world is good on some accounts. We can reach more people, but it's never as good as in person. And so I'm excited about this offseason compared to last offseason.
Brandon, what do you think you got from Cole Beasley this year, and how does he project for you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, Cole had, I think, about the same number of catches. Joe, you can verify that for me. Maybe not as much total yards. I don't remember his touchdown count. Cole can still play. At times, our offense went through some different things were working at times early in the year. Middle of the year, we had some lulls, and then late, Isaiah played some roles in some games where, Daboll thought that, you know, the jet motion, the jet sweeps, you know, if it was press man, you know, Isaiah running across the formation, whatever it was, deep overs, that was a better matchup. So sometimes Isaiah, you know, and when he got his chances, he made plays. I think that, you know, probably took Cole out of the game, sometimes just for our running stuff. You know, as we got our running game going a little bit down the stretch, we just felt that Isaiah really helped that because you know, the stuff behind the line of scrimmage is harder for these backers or whoever's the safety coming down to read, and it's not a way we would use Cole in that way. So Cole can still play, and he'll continue to play in this league, and you know, his diminished snaps was just more where our offense was at the time. We had a lot of pieces. I mean, the game at New England, it can be hard. Not that you have too many pieces, but you got Diggs, Emmanuel, Gabe, Cole, Isaiah. Everybody wants the ball, and that's where Daboll's job is hard, and Josh Allen's, you know, he's wanting to feed them all. In some games, one guy's getting 8 targets and the other guy's getting none, and it flips. I thought that game against New England, our receivers all pitched in and made plays, and it's hard to do, but I think it was as much maybe he didn't feel like he had as much production because other guys were making plays. I mean, 2 years ago, it was really him and John Brown. Last year, it was him and Diggs. John Brown was hurt. Gabe came on for us. I felt like this year, year 2, we had just more weapons at Josh's disposal.
You said you can still play, but do you see him as a plus moving forward for your team?
For our team, yeah. I mean, Cole, he's still under contract, so you know, I didn't sit down with Cole at the end and see where he was at and things like that. But yeah, I would anticipate Cole being back.
Brandon, how would you assess the run game? Because it was something last year that we talked about that was inconsistent and probably needed to take a step forward. And then this season, maybe it started a little slower than expected, but certainly finished strong. So as a whole group, how would you assess that part?
Yeah, Matt, very inconsistent early. And, you know, we struggled to get that going. You know, I think as we've alluded to in some of these other earlier questions, we definitely found a rhythm. I thought Devin had his best stretch of his 3-year career, December, January, ran with, for a 200-pound guy, he runs with good power. And I thought his vision was really good and catching the ball out of the backfield, you know, and I thought the O-line found their rhythm. And again, it's all got to work in sync. And sometimes, you know, I could go bring in 5 Pro Bowler linemen here, and everybody go, man, we're about to just run through the world. It doesn't always work that way. The communication piece is so important between these guys. And, you know, obviously it starts with Mitch at the center calling, you know, IDing the protections or whatever the run game is. And, you know, that down the stretch, that group, you know, we hated to lose Ike because I thought it was gelling even with him. But Ryan Bates, next man up, got his chance. And I didn't feel we dropped off. And it kind of just, the ball kept rolling once we started. So something to build on for that whole group. And hopefully next year we won't start out with the lull that we kind of had this year.
Brandon, with the offensive line, it's the second year, you bring back Quentin, kind of goes south early, bring back Daryl and John. John ultimately gets hurt, doesn't come back in. Daryl kicks inside. Just how do you feel the offensive line has kind of been handled over the past couple of years, and where do you see maybe some of the evaluations before the season seeming to go so far south, you know, not too far in?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 ways. I mean, I feel like we've had good depth, you know, even back to last year that with Quentin's situation, you know, the hard part is when you have a lot of competition, people that have started, they want to start, and I want that. Sometimes people can get frustrated, and so it kind of goes both ways. You gotta have enough talent. You're going to have injuries there. We see that, but you got to make sure that you also have guys that understand their roles and are willing to accept them. And so I think that happened, I mean, at times, but, you know, we'll continue to try to have depth there, and we'll continue to try to build it. As I said, with the D-line, we got to be strong. It starts with protecting Josh, and part of protecting Josh is also a run game. And I'm not saying we got to run it 30 times, but enough to keep him honest so that these DNs aren't just pinning their ears back and, chasing him 7-8 yards down the field.
Brandon, overtime rules have been a big topic among the
Yeah.
fan base, understandably, from Sunday night. And I don't know to what degree that you talked to Terry and Kim, or could you indicate maybe to what extent they would be in support of a change to overtime rules, any proposal moving forward?
Yeah, Adam, it's funny, when we had in-person, the league, the owners meetings, a couple years ago, it's been, the last 2 years it wasn't. That was a big topic on the table that was being tossed around. Various proposals were being thrown out there. It happened again last year, but we had the owners meeting Zoom. It was kind of a harder, nothing passed. I do think it's a hot topic. I have my own ideas. At the end of the day, we lost the game the other night, but of course we would love to, and I think TV audience would have loved to see Josh and our offense get it back. I would definitely love to see it brought back to the table. I'm not saying I have the exact idea, but I think there's some ways to do it. Without getting into detail, I think there's a way you can do it in the regular season that handles that, but let's do something in the postseason when it's all on the line, and that would be where my head is on it. I have not talked to Terry and Kim on it. Sean and I'll, in the coming days, we'll do our exit with them, kind of debrief of the whole season, and I'm sure we'll talk about it.
So you could see a comparison, say, to the NHL will not have a shootout during the regular season and a sudden death format, not direct,
Yeah.
but a different format for the postseason to alleviate that.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that I've thought of, and that has been proposed too. There's been some different proposals of something in the regular season a certain way, because it's a 17-game season, okay? You can't have these guys playing too many minutes from wear and tear. So maybe there ends up being some more ties in the regular season, but let's make sure we give both offenses a chance when the season's on the line. I think we all, I know Kansas City lost a few years back to New England, I think in a similar game, maybe it was the championship game, where Brady took them all the way down, scored, Mahomes never got the ball back, and so I'm sure even though it benefited them the other night, I'm sure they would be in a favor. If you got Pat Mahomes, you're always going to want to make sure he gets the ball, and we feel the same about Josh.
We know that Ryan could wind up getting a head coaching job, or Leslie for that matter. But Ryan could wind up getting a head coaching job. There's reports that Ken could be his first choice as OC. So a little bit of a two-part question here, Brandon. I know you can't go into details. What are those talks like leading up to that to communicate to Ken what you would want, number one? And number two, last year you kept your entire staff intact, which is very rare actually. I think
Yeah.
a couple assistant position coaches went to college. Let's say Ken or other people do leave. What is that process like? Are you already knowing where to branch out to communicate to other people who are looking for jobs or already have jobs?
Yeah, so, Sean and I have talked about a list of candidates for, if you lose Leslie Frazier, if you lose Brian Daboll, the rules are such that no matter what, you have to interview from the outside anyway for coordinator positions. So we would follow all those. We have a list of some guys. We kind of have to wait. We're kind of in this wait and see mode because at this point, Brian and Leslie are still in the interview mode, and it's hard because we're kind of like, is he getting one? Is he not? Is he getting one? Is he not? And we're rooting for them both to get one. We really appreciate what they've done, but until it happens, we can't start our process of interviewing for, offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. But yeah, we always want to look inside too. We would want to look at what do we have, whether on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball, what do we have on staff here that we think could handle Brian's job or Leslie's, and then who are the candidates out there that we've coached against, played against, whatever it is that, man, that guy, that system I really like. I wonder what it would be like. Let me bring him in and pick his brain and see if he would be a fit. So we'll definitely look inside and look outside.
Brandon, when it comes to possibly having to replace Brian Daboll, Sean said that they would keep Josh in the loop and communicate with him. How much do you guys, from your perspective, take Josh's opinion and input into account? And how much do you value a possible, guy to replace him that has familiarity already with Josh, considering he's only ever had one offensive coordinator his entire career up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I feel fortunate that Josh has only had one offensive coordinator. You see young quarterbacks, and I'll get to your question, but you see young quarterbacks struggle that have to go through multiple coordinators. So that was one of the things that we put down, stability in the offensive system and the coaches around him. So it's been great 4 years, and 3 of those years, Ken Dorsey's been right there. Shea Tierney, got a great group. Even Davis Webb, in his own way, he's like a player coach for us. So, but Josh, definitely value his opinion. We have a great relationship. I sat down with Josh Monday, and we just talked about the game, the season, life, and he's in such a great spot. I'm so proud of where he's at. I and/or Sean, we'd be crazy not to loop him in. Now we would ask him for opinion, but like sometimes last year, I'll go back to signing Mitch Trubisky. I already had the deal, close to done, but I called Josh and just said, hey, before I finalize this, this is what's going down. Is there anything I'm missing? You guys have never had an issue with each other that I'm aware of, done my research, but I definitely wouldn't want to bring someone in the quarterback room, player, coach, whatever, that might not allow Josh to be at his best. And Mitch was outstanding, and I know he's going to get a chance to go out and play. But yeah, whatever it is, if it's, if Brian leaves, we'd be silly not to get Josh's opinion. And listen, we know what he thinks of Ken Dorsey. It's very high. That matters to us. But we definitely have to do our due diligence.
You mentioned Mitch there. Do you anticipate him potentially leaving for a starting role, or would you like to have him back, given the role that he had working with Josh?
I'd love to have Mitchell back. If you could negotiate that same deal we got him on last year, Jay. I give you his agent's number, let me know if you get it done. But everything's negotiable, buddy. Yeah, Mitch did a great job. What a fit here he was, and his wife, and I know they're expecting now. He and Josh didn't really know each other, but Josh and I talked about Mitch yesterday, or 2 days ago, and he was outstanding. Like, for a guy that wants to play, I worried in season if he was going to start getting the itch, like, man, I want to get out there. And we even, someone called us at the trade deadline asking about him, and he was such a great fit for us. I couldn't part with him, knowing the team we had, and fortunately Josh stayed healthy. But if anybody calls me about Mitch on another team, I'm going to give him, a great recommendation. And if he doesn't get where I've told him and his agent, if he doesn't get what he wants, we got a spot for him.
Having that experience with Mitch, though, how do you approach the backup quarterback spot going forward? Like, is a one-year thing, like with Mitch, do you see that fitting in the future, or how do you kind of view building behind Josh?
Yeah, we'll definitely look. We'll look at both free agency and the draft, just like we did last year. This was unique that Mitchell had some. He had some opportunities, but they weren't at stable places, and he was at the point where it didn't work out at the Bears. You don't want to go somewhere that quick and it go negative, go south on him. Come here and hit the reset. And, again, I talked to Mitchell before he left, and he, even though there were times he definitely wanted to play, he thought the reset was good for him. So, Lena, we'll look at all those avenues. It's an important position. We know how Josh is. I'm up there screaming for him to get down plenty of times. And I don't ever get onto him for throwing interceptions, a fumble, or whatever happens. The only time I ever get on Josh is for taking unnecessary hits, and that's his play style. That's why we love him. But a backup quarterback is very important, knowing the way he plays the game.
Look, I was going to ask you about that in terms of Josh and running the ball, and from the outside looking in. It seemed like as the year went on, I'll use the word cohesion within the scheme of the offense. Like, it seemed that there was some type of consensus, we're going to use this to our advantage, but we're going to be smarter about it. I'm putting words in your mouth that I don't mean to, but I sensed less ad lib and more like designed stuff that factored in that to an extent, with there obviously being a risk there. Was that the case?
You nailed it, Adam. Spot on. I think He likes to run the ball. You know, he enjoys it. I think it gets him lathered up. And, you know, he's a linebacker playing quarterback. That's his mentality. I think you guys know that. Like, I want him to get down. He wants to run over somebody. And he's improved in that. You remember at Miami a year or two ago, he's trying to, you know, it's Kyle Van Noy and somebody else, and like dudes are teeing off on him. That's not what you should do. You should get down. But he likes it, gets him in a rhythm, gets him in a flow. You know, the main thing that, you know, Sean and I have talked to Daboll about, or Dorsey, or Josh himself, is just try and get down when you can. And I thought this year at times he really did a good job. Down the stretch, late, gotta have it moments. I'm a little bit more okay with it. Early in the season, slide, get out of bounds, don't take those unnecessary hits.
Brandon, I know you concern yourself with everything, but cornerback in particular, you might lose Levi, Trey, you hope comes back and is good, but that looks like an area that is going to need some addressing. Is there a concern at that spot?
Yeah, I mean, Sal, you know, last year, you know, I know people were upset or, you know, didn't understand why I didn't draft one where we did. We had corners in the draft that we liked. The problem was we had other players ahead of them. And, you know, we looked at this middle of the season, at the end of the season after Dane had played a lot. You know, our guys measured out pretty well to, you know, a good number of those guys in the draft. And you don't just want to take a guy. Let's just say I took a guy in the second round instead of taking Boogie, even though I didn't really have that value on him. You guys are going to be expecting, well, man, this guy went the second round. The fans are going to be expecting this guy went the second round. I reached for him, and there's going to be a level of expectation. His teammates who don't scout are going to be like, oh man, we got a second round corner, let's do this. And then if he's not beating out the guy who you took in the 7th round the year before, there's going to be like, what's going on? That's a bust. And so I have to be very careful when I select a guy to make sure I'm selecting at his value. And that's why I truly follow the board to a degree. You know, I couldn't continue to take DNs every round last year, even though I like to. But that's the truth. So it is a position, and probably the biggest emphasis is Tre'Davious coming off an ACL. Where will that be in August? You know, will he be able to practice some? Will he be full? Will he be definitely ready to go game one? You never know with those things. He's on track. He's here every day. He's working hard. He's super competitive. We're very confident he will be, but still a long way to go. So it's definitely something I'll pay attention to in free agency. Levi's a free agent. He tested the waters last year. We were able to get him back. You know, he's a guy we will definitely talk to, and would love to get him back if he wants to be back. That, you know, time will tell there. But either way, you know, we'll continue to look for depth at the corner position.
What about the development?
Brandon,
What did you think of the
going
development?
back to Josh Allen,
Yep.
Sean McDermott said when we talked to him yesterday that, you know, we still want to continue to put pieces around him that help him succeed. How does that get easier or harder, knowing that he's been here for 4 years and has had a lot of success, and you guys do have pieces that you like in place, but you're probably just looking for more specifics now, but also balancing how the offense finished the end this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always going to try. First thing, I'm going to try and protect him. As I said earlier, I got to make sure the O-line is set and that we're confident in them. But beyond that, always looking for the various pieces, whether it's a size guy, a guy who's just going to run the intermediate routes quicker than fast. You know, we mentioned Tyreek Hill. I mean, you'd love to have a guy, a rack guy that you can get the ball to, and he can turn a 5-yard pass into a 60-yard touchdown. So we'll continue to look for those things. You know, you can never, we've talked about speed here, I think Heather asked it, but you can never have enough of that. So we'll continue to look for various ways, you know, out of the backfield, tight end. You know, Dawson had a really good year. You know, there's various ways to run an offense, whether you run 2 tight ends, whether you run 5 wide, whether you run 2 backs. So you really just want to find different pieces, and it doesn't have to fit exactly. We don't have to go just find a tight end or go find just a certain receiver we'll find pieces, and that's where Brian Daboll, and if Daboll goes, he'll be on the offensive coordinator to kind of put it together and utilize their skill set.
Tremaine and Ed Oliver are 23 and 24. Just what did you think of their trajectory here?
Tremaine and Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll take them one at a time. I thought Tremaine did a really good job again. His leadership. Tremaine is a quieter guy. Probably if you compare him and Josh, they're both the quarterbacks of their side of the ball. Tremaine is naturally quieter, more lead by example. But when he speaks, guys do listen, and I think he's, year by year, he's more comfortable being that guy, being that alpha, even though maybe it's not innately natural to him. Tremaine has done some really good things. I thought his physicality improved this year, take on, getting off blocks. I thought all that improved. There's still, things that he wants to get better at, and we think, going into next year, he's a young player still, but, going into year 5, we think he'll be even better. And Ed, didn't have, he had 3 or 4 sacks that were probably taken away from him, on penalties, things like that. I thought he was our best, most consistent D lineman all year from start to finish, and I think he trended up all year. The game slowed down for Ed this year, and he was a huge factor in our success. And again, Sal asked me earlier about grading the D line. Those guys were a big part of what we did, even though we don't have a 15 sack guy or anything like that, a number of tackles for loss. Ed really helped the back end with his disruption, having the quarterback get the ball out, or at least getting him off the spot, having to throw on the move turns into an incompletion or an interception.
They ran it back to Tremaine just for a second.
Yes.
Any part of football, you do, but if I'm looking at it, it looks like he's a great athlete. And it looks like it's the instinct that maybe he doesn't quite have the instinct. Would you say that, you talk about things he needs to improve on, would that be something, maybe the way he reacts, is instinctual out there?
Yeah, I think certain, as a young player, some things come faster to others. I think Tremaine has definitely improved his awareness, his instinct of what to see. I think like anything, Sal, sometimes you face an offense that does a lot more. I was talking about Isaiah McKenzie, or, some offenses you face, listen, I got 2 indicators and then go. And then maybe, but you got to remember too, he's also the quarterback of the defense. He's calling, he's checking, he's doing a lot pre-snap to get us lined up. It's a hard job, in the sense of, it's like Josh has got to make sure all these things, and then he's got to go execute it. I appreciate where you're coming from. I think Tremaine does a lot with the whole operation that doesn't get noticed because maybe he didn't quite get through the B gap in time to make the play, or he was late. He's a heck of an athlete. He's improved his the pass concepts. I think, again, this was all new for him coming to middle linebacker, and I think if you look at where he's at every year, I think he has improved a little bit each year to where he's at. He'll be the first to tell you that there's plays that he wants back that, man, I should have seen that quicker, or I should have reacted quicker. I should have been more physical, or I should have got my eyes around to find the receiver in whatever pass play it was. But he helps us in a lot of ways that sometimes, again, don't necessarily get picked up, by Joe Fan or whoever.
With that being said, where do you stand in regards to a contract extension with him? I know you picked up his 5th year, but is that something that's on the table that you'd like to get done this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at all that. The cap is what the first thing I got to do is make sure we can operate and what moves are going to have to be made, whether it's a pay cut. We did that with some guys, cap releases. So I'll kind of do all that first, but, love Tremaine, and I'm sure at the right time, we would consider anything, but it's, I really don't usually do that at this time of year. We'll just kind of see how it goes, see what holes we fill, and, probably table that for now.
Anticipation, the 5th year option on Ed, do you anticipate?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done it, but yeah, I mean, you heard me rave about him, so, yeah.
Two players, Brandon, real quick. Harrison Phillips, he mentioned you know his value better than anyone around the league. He's going to be a free agent for you. He even mentioned community, all the things he does. If you could speak on how you'd like to bring him back.
Yeah.
And were you satisfied with what you got from Matt Hawk this year?
Okay, Harrison. Who doesn't love Harry? I mean, he's an unbelievable human, which we knew coming out of Stanford. He's had some setbacks with the injury stuff, but was super proud of him the way, you know, it timed up well. Starr kind of had COVID. Talked about it didn't go as well for him coming back with just the inconsistency. But in steps Harry to be that consistent guy opposite Ed and really stabilized our front in there. And he does a lot of things. I talked about Tremaine making calls, setting the defense. Harry probably communicates the most to that D-line when they're running games, what's coming based on down and distance, alignment, formation. He does a lot to help Ed and these other guys run those things in sync. We talked about Mitch calling pass protections. He's kind of doing the other of that from a defensive line standpoint. Like Kyle Williams was amazing at that. That's why Kyle played so long. He was good enough, but he's just so smart. He knew what was coming, and he beats the guy to the punch. Harry is really grown into that, and so we'll have to figure out, you know, what his value is, and that's kind of been my conversation with him. But you know, really proud of him. Would love to. We drafted him here. Would love to keep him and see him continue his career here. Matt Hawk, inconsistent year. You know, he just had his ups and downs. Matt's a great kid. Worked hard. Really did. It didn't always translate. I know he had the one really bad game. Nobody felt it worse than him. Matt works super hard. Great teammate. All that stuff. You know, we just didn't want. I know people probably were frustrated, and you know, should we swap him out? Should we not? But Tyler Bass was having a Pro Bowl year. I know he was like third or fourth alternate. He got robbed in my mind. He had a heck of a year. If people had to kick in the elements that he kicked in and did some really good things, his numbers would be better if he wasn't, you know, necessarily playing here. Matt was a big part of that. Matt has great soft hands, sets it down, no issues, and that doesn't get talked about. People don't realize that, but that's huge in that operation to do that. And I did not want to mess with Tyler and Reed and Matt, that cohesion, the three of them. And Tyler's having too good a year to mess with that. Will I look at it in the offseason? Yes.
Brandon, you know, you talked about it, Sean talked about it, the nature of this season. You know, COVID, year two, you know, all the vaccination stuff. I mean, you can see it on the Zooms even, like the stress that it puts on you guys as an organization.
Yeah.
Now you've had all these year-end, you know, chats with all the players and coaches. What's the status of that culture that you guys worked so hard to build going into another important offseason?
I think the culture is really good. You know, I know with whether it was Cole or whoever else, the vaccine, you know, but the vaccine talk was going on in every building. You had guys in every organization. I talked to GMs about, you know, how are you guys, I was trying to learn, how are you guys, you know, at one point in camp, I think we had like 13 that were unvaccinated, and you know, one team was down to like 2 or 3, and I called that GM like, how are you guys doing? What am I missing here? And you know, it wasn't a lot different. You know, there were various ideas we tried, and we got it down to I think 6. That it was a slow build. You know, for various reasons, guys have their beliefs, and that's the world we live in. But I don't think it ever messed with our culture at all. I mean, I think guys, I don't think whether it was Cole, anybody else, I don't think they were trying to do anything to take away from the team. They just had their beliefs, and in the building, there really wasn't like friction going on about it once we got to playing football.
You mentioned your conversation with Josh on Monday. What was that like? What was your message to him? And what do you kind of make of this season?
Yeah, you know, Josh is so comfortable in his own skin, and just, you know, he knows that, you know, I can share with him things that, you know, and he can do the same, that we got that kind of relationship. There's a lot of trust. The trust I have in him is how we got his contract done, to be honest with you. And because, like anything, the agent's job's always to just get as much as they can. And I think Josh did a great job of laying out what was important to him, and we laid out what was important to us. And without that relationship, I don't know if that would have got done. But he's, you know, his year, you know, was, I thought he had a heck of a year. There was a couple, he went through, you know, a few games where our offense was out of rhythm and maybe he wasn't in sync either. But for a lot of the year, I thought he deserved to be in the caliber, you know, of the top quarterbacks in the league. And, you know, I think we can all agree he got snubbed on the Pro Bowl. And, you know, but the great thing about him, it just is a deeper chip on his shoulder, and we saw that. I'm proud of him. I'm excited that he's our guy. And it's a relief because you look around the league and this is the most important position in all sports. And I know we're down. I know I expressed my hurt earlier for losing that game, but we can smile today that we have Josh Allen.
Brandon, I don't want to paint you into a corner or anything. You also answered it a little bit when Jay was talking to you earlier, but I do think looking back on last year, you were like, yeah, we need to improve the pass rush, and that was something you were openly trying to improve. Is there an area, a position, anything that you're like, that's our number one focus going into the offseason, we need to get better there?
Not really. I mean, I want to get better everywhere, Matt. I really do. I'm going to look hard. I'm going to look back at the pass rush too, and what pieces will be leaving and what do we have to fill in there. You know, I'm going to start there on the defense. And, you know, I thought our secondary played really well, but as Sal alluded to earlier, you know, Tre'Davious' injury, Levi's a free agent. We're going to have to look there. You know, we got Tremaine and Matt back. We got a lot of guys, you know, in that linebacker room that are all going to be back. And then offensively, you know, we'll definitely start at looking at the O-line and see what that's going to look like, because the O-line changed a lot. We know for various reasons, injury, not playing well, COVID, whatever it was. Some of the guys that kind of thought we would roll with all year long, it didn't turn out that way, and that happens. But not a specific position. You know, probably. You know, Dawson did really well. You know, maybe some depth there to compete with him, but I'm going to look at every position there.
Brandon, how would you assess run defense?
Run defense. Overall, it got better. We had some moments where, you know, we had some games. Here's the thing. It's truly about points that you're allowing more than the run defense. Our run defense wouldn't have looked as bad. Go back to that Tennessee game. You know, Derrick Henry, we didn't get him down. Like, you can give up a 30-yard run, a 40-yard run. You just got to get him down and reset. This year we had a few games. That one, the Harrison for New England that took that one run, which was huge in losing that game. You know, the Indy game, that was really the only game I would say we got blown out of the gym. They had our number all day. They knocked us in the mouth. We turned the ball over, and we never recovered. And they were hitting their stride. They were playing really good football, and we probably weren't. That was right when Starr was out, and we were transitioning up there, but we definitely were not in sync. I think Tremaine was out that game. He was. And so that was the one game I would say I was really disappointed in our run defense. But the New England game, I know we got talked about. You know, they ran it 45, 46 times. If we'd have just got him down on the one long run, I don't think people would have been talking about it if we'd have won the game, you know, otherwise.
Brandon, how much a priority is it to bring back Ryan Bates, and how much has that changed over what he and the offensive line done together the last month or so?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to Batesy. Just from when he came in here, you know, we traded for him in the middle of training camp, and we were going down. I'll never forget. We're going down to Carolina. He's never played center. We're going to scrimmage them, and somebody was out, and and maybe it was Mitch or something, and somebody else went out, and we're like, Bates, can you play center? Oh, okay. And he went in there like he had done it before. It's like, and he became a 5-hole guy. I mean, it's a, you know, you're talking about a baseball analogy, a guy that could play first base, third base, left field, emergency catcher, and you don't have those guys. So he's a great piece for us to take on game day. Super proud of how he came in there. Ike goes down, and we didn't miss a beat. And he and Dion and Mitch on that left side really meshed well. And I thought Dion played some of his best football with Bates next to him. So I think, does Dion get credit? Yes, I think Bates gets some credit there too.
What about the future of Jerry Hughes? What have your conversations been like with him about coming back?
Yeah, talk to Jerry. You know, first I want to say he has been great here since day one. I mean, we've turned this roster over, and Jerry's been the one constant that's been here and earned that right. He's obviously an aging guy, and I did talk to him, and he intimated to me that you never know where people are, but that he believes at this point he would like to continue his career. So I told him we'll look at it on our end. There's no reason for us to jump the gun until the season ends and kind of the finality of it, how you're feeling. But as of now, he sounded to me like he wants to play. So we'll look at that and consider. But I don't really have a, you know, I have to see how all the pieces, how the money works, and we'll go from there.
Brandon, how difficult it is to protect defense year over year is much more than offense. How much of an emphasis is there to make sure that you continue to add pieces so that when you have the fastball, which is the passing offense, still running it as hot as they have the past few years?
Yeah, as far as building our defense up.
As far as like making sure you can build up your offense because defense is unpredictable.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, we want to keep our strength strong, and I think overall, you know, our offense had a really stellar year a year ago, 2020, with some of the numbers that Josh and Daboll and that crew put up. I didn't think this year we would match that, and we didn't. If you add the long haul, but that's hard to do. People watch your film, they study. I know in Carolina in 2015, when we made that run, Cam was the MVP. The next year it didn't go so well. Guess what? People studied you and figured out and looked at the teams that slowed you down. And I think, you know, I think this year Josh, one of the maturation pieces that I didn't mention earlier is he started taking more of what the defense is getting. You're not, Josh, you're not throwing it downfield. You are checking it down, or we're going to pick the ball off. And that New England game on the road, he started out that game checking it down to those guys and really got us in a rhythm. And then they started playing, and we hit some other stuff. But we'll definitely try and keep this offense as strong as we can. We're going to try and, we like to get out on leads to help our defense, because if we can get leads on guys, then that gives these pass rushers a chance to get home, and I believe that's the formula.
Have you started at all looking at assistant GM and what you might want to do there, or how you're going to approach that?
Yeah, Elena, I think right now, you know, never say never. You never know how changes come. There's not someone that I'm targeting outside the building or inside. I feel really good with the staff we have. I mentioned the other day on the Zoom that, you know, Terrence Gray, Malik Boyd, Brian Gain. You know, Brian's been a GM and been by my side since 17. Those guys have as well. We've got some other key players. I don't want to run through them all, but I had a great meeting, you know, via Zoom, which I had alluded I was going to on Saturday, with all of them, the college and the pro, all as one, and we just kind of talked about everything that's coming up, where we're at, where we're heading, and I think we'll be just fine. We'll fill in the gaps, the things that Joe was leading for us, and it'll be a little more on Brian Gain, be a little more on Terrence, a little more on Malik and their staffs, but I really love the staff we have. So my plan right now is to go through the draft and do that, and then just kind of look at that point, that's kind of the end of our season, like we are now, and I'll look at that point to what changes, if any, I would make.
I know.
You mentioned him in health campers a couple of times. Just what have you brought to the team this year, and what have your conversations been like with him about his future?
Yeah, Emmanuel, you know, one thing I always had followed his career, and I think I told you we tried to trade for him, you know, a couple years back, but he's played in Super Bowls, Super Bowl experience, played with good teams, played with Peyton Manning, played with Ben Roethlisberger. Like he Drew Brees, he knows what winning football looks like, and I thought Emmanuel came in and had several games where he had 2 touchdowns, was a unique piece for us. He still had enough speed to stretch the field vertically. He could also play inside if with packages where Gabe and Steph were outside, he could come inside. And so I love what he brought. True pro, showed up every day, had some injuries with setback with the knee a couple times, but handled it like a pro. And I thought when we needed him, he brought the veteran experience that we were looking for. I know Josh, I talked to Josh several times in the year, and you know, Emmanuel would come up in those conversations, and he really enjoyed what Emmanuel brought to the group. Thought he was a good influence on the room in the receivers, whether it was Steph, the young guys, Gabe, and he and Cole knew each other. They played SMU together, so we kind of had that to start the year. I don't know what his plan is next. You know, I'm not sure. You know, I think he's hinted before that maybe this would be his last year, but I have not had a sit down with him to say definitely what he's doing. You know, if he said he wanted to come back, you know, I would definitely listen, and we'd have to work the business out, but I don't have an answer on if he's planning to play, Captain.
Just an operational question. I have no idea if you can have anything to do with this, but there's some rumors that the Bills can play overseas next year. It could be in the rotation. Would that be something, A, you'd be in favor of, or not carry it away, or would you even have any say in the league, say, we'd like to do that or not like to do that?
You talking about like a London game or something?
London or Germany, and they go there, yes.
You got any golf courses over there I can play?
I'm sure there are.
If the weather's good and the golf's good, I can work that out. We're in. No, Sal, I have not heard one thing. I would generally think that we would have heard something by now of, hey, we're considering, would you be open to it? Because the other part of that is, are you talking about, is it one of the Bills' home games or away games?
Right.
And, you know, I'm not speaking for the Pagulas here, so I'm speaking for me only. I personally don't want to give up a home game to go over there. I want to play in front of Bills Mafia.
Hey Brandon, how does the standard and the challenge to your team change or elevate, knowing that there were some positives this year, but you guys still fell short of that big goal?
Yeah, I mean, nothing really changes. I mean, I know we lost the game the other night, but you know, we have to reset. You know, I said this last year. You know, we don't get to start at the AFC Championship, so that's the hard part here. You work so hard, and that's why there's so much despair when you lose a game like that. The finality of, you know, just yesterday we were preparing for a game, and you know, we wish today we were still preparing for our next game. It's over like that, and it's a new team. And so, you know, one of the things I said to the guys in the exit team meeting was, you know, it starts in our off-season program. And listen, lifting weights, running, all that is important, but it starts with that bond, that trust factor of the guy next, you know, the guy next to you. And that is very important as we have our culture here. And so that will be, as we look for the draft, free agency, pieces that fit our culture. Obviously, they got to be a good enough player at whatever position they play, but we'll continue to look for the same types of players, and you know, we'll look to add youth where we can in the draft, and again, the standard doesn't change. We have to start it over again, 0-0, and we're going to have to work our tails off because we know it starts with winning our division. And you know, New England, Miami, the Jets, in various ways, the Jets have a lot of picks. Miami's got a lot of picks, and both those teams have money. New England was very aggressive last year in free agency. I'm sure they're going to do the same. It all starts with winning the division, and we've got to know that we have a target on our back, and we got to hold those 3 teams off.
And between you, Claire, Sean, and Wilson, besides that part that people are still feeling, but Sean yesterday used the phrase like 3 or 4 times to maybe that's part of the story. How do you do that? How do you spin it forward, especially this
Yeah, I mean, most people that achieve success, a triumphant victory, or they became the president of the United States, or a doctor, whatever it is, it's not without failure. And, you know, I can say I've learned the most in my life and the most in the 5 years I've been the GM about the things I did wrong. And so we have to learn from not only this game, we got to learn from some of the games we lost in the year, because, as I said, I want to play every playoff game in this stadium next door. And you always ask yourself, what if Kansas City would have had to come here? What would that have been like? The advantage to playing at home in January, coming up here in the cold, the elements, whatever it is. And so, you know, I think that's how you look at it. You got to learn from it. We're definitely going to look at everything that went right this year, but we're going to look hard at everything that went wrong, including the last 13 seconds. Are we good?
Good. Thank you.